Dubai is getting busier, UAE is getting busier.
Over the next few years, when the newer buildings and new stock becomes available, a lot of the tenants that are in those existing buildings will probably look to move into the newer buildings. So then it brings the question, what will happen to the spaces?
Well, I think where we do see the difference is those that sort of are a bit more accepting of it are probably setting the portfolios up to be in a better position.
We're actually seeing this is not just the future, this is now. This is something that's actually being looked at now and is really important.
Whole repositioning projects do play a large role in the UAE hitting any sustainability target.
As the stock comes in, those tenants will move, and if they want to retain them and be able to be charging, they need to have a plan, a longer term plan now. Hi, welcome to CSQ's Built Different podcast. CSQ is a multidisciplinary building surveying, project management and cost consultancy firm. We are looking today at the repositioning of buildings. I'm Brenton, I'm head of the building surveying team. We look at a variety of services in the region, including technical due diligence assessments and asset repositioning.
Hi, my name's Sophia. I am an associate quantity surveyor here at CSQ, and my team look at the commercial aspects of construction projects within CSQ, which can range from anything from asset repositioning to commercial office fit out, villas, residential projects, F&B, and that includes anything commercially and contract administration.
Hi, my name's Davies, Associate Project Manager at CSQ. Our team specialises in the full spectrum of delivery of fit-out projects and construction projects in the region across the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
So today we're talking about asset repositioning, which is something that we do at CSQ. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, and we're really starting to see the significance of it in the UAE, especially in the current market. Andrew, do you want to tell us a bit more about what it actually involves and what it is?
Yeah, so asset repositioning is obviously for an existing asset. It comes in a lot of different forms. It can be anything from a light touch repositioning with simple decoration and repositioning of an asset where it might be a bit newer, all the way through to older assets with failed facades, old MEP kit that needs upgrading. And really it's looking at how investors can really get the best value out of their assets, whether they're for tenant security or for ensuring they get better returns on their investment through lease income.
I guess it's a bit of in summary, it's like a facelift for a building. Right?
Yeah, and it can be like anything from a paint job to a full
reactivation.
A full redo of it, which is particularly now it's very prevalent because a lot of Dubai stock was built. I think something like 50% of Dubai stock was built over 20-25 years ago. So from my side, from a building surveying perspective, a 25-year-old bit of MEP kit probably is end of life. Buildings probably have a 50 to 60 year life on structure, so you might go through 2 MEP cycles of kit before the end of life, but at 25 years you'll be looking at, particularly toilets will be very done by 25 years.
And all of the air conditioning systems and things like that.
Yeah, or even just tastes. Even if you look at a building that's 10 years old, they can look quite dated, can't they? When you look at stuff that's 10 years old, beech was in fashion. You've got loads of beech wood everywhere, and
now it's
magnolia, and now
isn't it?
Screams and travertine.
Yeah, so even just stuff like that. People, if you're renting a building, you want something that looks more more modern, don't
And
you?
I think also with a lot of the buildings, just on aesthetics, I guess without looking at MEP, but recently, if you look at some of the buildings now, like the ones that are 10, 15 years old, the look and feel is that older Arabic tradition, like the dark wood that everyone's like trying to move away from. That's in like accommodation, in buildings, older, darker marbles. And I think also what's important just on the asset repositioning as well is, like you said about the life cycle, like 10 to 15 years is when typically you would start to look at the upgrades. A lot of the buildings in Dubai were actually now come into that time where a lot of the commercial towers, even like hospitality, accommodation and residential, it's all coming to that time, isn't it? Like 10 to 15 years.
There's a lot of older stock now.
And that's coming in line with like a massive boom in people wanting spaces. Something needs to be done about it.
Yeah.
I guess it leads on to the whole element of the limit of grade A supply and office buildings in particular in the region. So I think we'll probably see over the next few years, when the newer buildings and new stock becomes available, a lot of the tenants that are in those existing buildings will probably look to move into the newer buildings. So then it brings the question, what will happen to the spaces and the old stock?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen recently a lot of the grade A tenants come in, particularly the multinationals. They've got things like LEED, for example, or WIDE or SMART scores, which are sort of coming in, they are looking for that because they've got BREEAM ratings, or they've got environmental ratings they need to hit. That if the building doesn't tick the box, then they'll go elsewhere. And so there's probably a lot of landlords that are have well tenanted buildings now that perhaps in the next couple of years, as you say, as the stock comes in, those tenants will move, and if they want to retain them and be able to be charging, they need to have a plan, a longer term plan now.
Yeah, and I guess at the moment they're kind of on the cusp of the buildings are old but they're still usable. There will become a point where a lot of the air conditioning system, for example, will fully need to be replaced.
And I think also, just to add to that as well, I think it's quite important, is the things like in Dubai, like the metro line and all these new services in terms of where people live in and how people access like public transport. So for example, Dira, where you've got Dubai Islands, there's going to be such a influx of people living there, and then buildings that are there are maybe older, they're not being as focused on as much as maybe like DIFC or other areas, and they're the older buildings, the older Dubai that maybe needs actually to have the repositioning as well, because eventually there's going to be areas which are a lot more accessible than what they were previously.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think, as you said, like areas do fall out of favour as well, don't they? So places that might be, like Internet City, for example, that's very popular at the moment. But then, as Business Bay comes online and DIFC too, it may be that you see more of an influx away from Internet City, and then Internet City may, as an example, have to think about what it does to bring its stock up to
and attract tenants as well.
And I think landlords who probably look at this earlier now will probably be in a better position in terms of their asset kind of long-term plan and strategy.
A proactive rather than a reactive version is, and that's so from the building surveying point of view, the first problem we usually find is a lack of building data. There won't be any drawings available or asset registers, so even us starting our job can be quite difficult sometimes. So even if landlords don't have an immediate desire to do that, even just making sure they've got a pack of information ready to be able to start doing it, which can, because that can take 5-6 months sometimes to pull together if you want a detailed enough set. And then beyond that, particularly if you've got a portfolio, having a strategy. So we'd go out and do a life cycle assessment of a building, and we'd give the landlord an idea of over a 5 or 10 or 15-year period when kit within the building might need to be replaced, and at least then you can budget across your portfolio so that you've got an idea, and then suddenly you don't have 3 buildings suddenly that all need air conditioning changed in a year, and you've then got 200-300 million dirhams you've got to find in a pot somewhere.
So I guess it's about like phasing the costs and the works to suit the kind of budget requirements for that year.
Yeah, and I suppose things like hospitality as well that we look at. I mean, even with that can be challenged because you've got to try and do it in the off season.
Do you think that landlords would listen to, like, say, in your recommendation, and you're telling a landlord in that life cycle, okay, in 10 years' time you need to replace this, this, and this? Do you think in this area, in this region, that the landlords understand the importance of it, or do you think it's something that could be more educated? I think,
So I come from the obviously European market, where we've been through this cycle probably hundreds of times over a very long period of time. So the European market's very set up. If you take London, for example, we haven't got land to build on. 90% of the market is probably repositioning perhaps versus new build. And so we're very used to having to do it, whereas I think here it's been build, which is great. There's a lot of land to build on. But then, as you say, DFC is pretty new, but give it 20, 30 years. If you don't do anything to it, it will look tired. So I think the market's, I don't want to say it's not set up for it, but it hasn't had to do it yet. So we're just starting to see that starting to come through. So obviously like AMT, which we did last year, that's sort of the first sort of steps.
Yeah, and I think with that we were really lucky because the clients really recognise the need and the importance of upgrading that building. If you upgrade it, what actual value it can bring in the long term. So it's more about not looking at the short term, especially when it comes to cost as well, the actual long term benefits that you're going to reap from that as well, and especially in a market where there's not a lot of office space because it was commercial.
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Particularly commercial. I mean, there's not a lot of space, so even maybe the sort of lower grade B, if you like, stuff gets let, but as we say, give it 3 or 4 years and you'll probably start to see that go the other way.
I think with that project that you just mentioned as well, like Sophia said, the client really was on board to make sure that that asset was brought back to a grade A building. They were willing to kind of look at all options to be able to facilitate that in terms of the programme, the budget, making sure that you have a really kind of well-versed design team appointed, and making sure that everything has been done like to the best standard. And ultimately, I guess it's been quite a successful project because the whole tower is now leased.
The acceptance perhaps of the clients to take on advice is varied, I think. I wouldn't even say it was institutional investor versus, say, a family office. Some family offices are very receptive to information, others aren't. I don't think there's necessarily which is probably the same as you get anywhere. Yeah. Well, I think where we do see the difference is those that sort of are a bit more accepting of it are probably setting the portfolios up to be in a better position where they can ensure that they're kept in good condition, and really the value of the buildings are kept at a good level.
Also, I think that's where CSQ come in and where the chartered professionals come in as well, because you've got the top-down approach from the government with some of their legislation, especially when it comes to the carbon or sustainability and the urban master planning, and making sure that these buildings are set up in a way that's future-proofed and also occupied to a certain level of standard that they're promoting to the rest of the world as well. This is the UAE, this is what we can produce and the quality that we have. So we've got it top down from the government, but then also from CSQ and our professionals and other institutes in this region. It's us kind of educating our clients. It's not just the aesthetics and what a building looks like, it's what's inside, what's above the ceiling, how well is that operating, are your tenants complaining about AC, which we all do. So the whole functionality, the quality of the bathroom spaces, the common areas, even now as well, how the landlord can utilise the space. So some of the common areas, particularly the lobby areas, in a lot of these older buildings, it's really large. It's not just a reception desk, there's all these empty wasted spaces. And we're now seeing more tenants use that for other business opportunities. So how can we come in and help them make that look better, but also function better?
And I think the easy thing to see is the decoration as well, isn't it? Or how the bathrooms look as well. But we've seen them recently where, you know, the actual facades failed, so the gaskets within the facade have failed. So the amount of moisture coming in, it's really humid here in the summer. Loads of moisture is then coming into the building. So I mean, we're still building in Barsha, where you go in and the corridors are really damp, there's mould, and really that's because effectively the fabric's end of life, it's failed or needs remedial work done to it. And then the M&E kit is again getting towards end of life, that can't cope with the moisture, and so it really needs a full work on it. And again, buildings like that, they'll soon be, the tenants will leave and the landlords will be left really with no income and
I guess
struggle.
It's about tailoring the approach then per specific building, and from your side, the building surveying side, kind of addressing what are the main issues that do need to be addressed in the building. So if AC and M&E systems and the facade is actually functioning fine, but the idea is really that they just want to attract better quality tenants, then a light refresh would probably suffice in that instance.
To add to that as well, because tenants want quality, and maybe before they were willing to put up with, maybe if they came around and it was a bit humid and there wasn't a lot of space, but now with the popularity of, you know, working from home, or even we're seeing a huge influx of the co-working spaces. So they may then choose, because the co-working spaces are newer, they may choose to actually relocate their office and hire a space somewhere else rather than take on an older building, because they expect that level of quality and they don't want to just put up with that anymore. They want to actually, especially for staff, because staff want more and or bringing a client in.
I think staff happiness, like within the office environment in the UAE, is something that we've seen quite a lot, and it's becoming kind of key to the strategy, even in fit out work.
You know, and access to gyms and coffee shops, or just anything really, just
the whole spectrum really. So if a landlord is looking to kind of look into how they may go about repositioning their asset or doing some upgrades, where would they start with that?
So we would look at initially doing a technical due diligence survey. So there's various types of TDD survey. There's sales and vendors packs, which are obviously for transactions and disposal of buildings. The one we would look at is an in-use survey. So we would be looking at picking up several things. So we'd do a TDD assessment, which would look at the whole fabric of the building, so the structure, windows, doors, as well as all the internals and the M&E. And then that gets then life cycled. So for example, if we were to look at the roof fabric, might be okay, but we look at it and say, actually this probably needs to be recoated in maybe 3-4 years time. So then within the life cycle, that would go in year 3 or 4. And then we're also looking at other things like health and safety. So this is a key thing. So legislation changes, so the health and safety requirements change. and so the landlords would have to be thinking about bringing the building up to code. And then really we're looking at giving the landlord a view of 5-10 years. So for example, if we find, so say the building's 20 years old, the likelihood is in 5 years time, in year 25 effectively of the building's life, they're going to need to perhaps look at a full M&E upgrade. And then this is where we sort of bring in the wider team. So Sophia would work with cost team, so they will give us cost input on that, and we'd maybe then look to align, if you're doing the M&E, ceilings have got to come down, lighting's got to be changed, because you're not going to tear the ceiling down and do the M&E without putting all that back. So we'd then be looking at engaging with the landlord for that property for year 5, and then obviously that would be then done across their whole portfolio. So the idea is hopefully that you would then get a view of, say they had 10 assets, all 10 assets, which you can then pull the year information through, and then we try and then blend the years out so that rather than peaks and troughs of spending, you've got more targeted level spend of cash so that the landlord hasn't got to try and pull big sums of money out.
And they can prepare their cash flow over the years as well. I think also, obviously, one of the benefits of this as well with the upgrades is then client internally look at ROI and how that will benefit them in the long term. So if they are spending money up front, then what's actually going to be the true value of that over a couple of years, not just 1 year, but over, say, the next 5 years, especially if the building next door to them does not look as flashy and good quality as theirs, then they'll really be able to see that benefit of spending the money up front, which is again part of that, I guess, that sales pitch to them, but it's a given, especially in this market as well. In terms of if landlords are willing to give up that money at that stage at the beginning of a project, it's just really doing that, spreading the cash out maybe throughout the number of years. What's the priority? What will help their business now? So is it just a facelift for now? Then can we do the MEP a little bit afterwards? And also particularly when it comes to the phasing, because we don't want to be too disruptive. And then in terms of the costs, we can then have a look, how much is that going to cost? You can do it on a floor by floor basis. This is how much you're spending. Which tenants do you want to prioritise as well? Because they may have certain high value tenants that they want to retain, or their lease is coming to an end. The negotiating power is with the tenants, so you might actually want to upgrade that floor quicker rather than the other floors. And then just to really, in the long term, then you keep the building tenanted as much as possible, which is what we've seen.
So I think that's where we're quite good though, because we've done a lot of this and different asset types and hotels and residential, quite used to having to adapt the project to suit the building. And as you say, there will be maybe a tenant on a floor that we have to look after more than others, and if they're an anchor tenant, then you're gonna look after them, aren't you? Which is understandable, and so we're very used to having to do that.
I think it's about almost understanding from the client's perspective as well what their priority is. So we've had it before where we've given 2 options, say a phased approach or a complete shutdown, for example, of certain parts of, say, a hotel. Because if they're able to facilitate that, then it can often be done a lot quicker, especially when you are dealing with the full technical upgrades aspect. There are shutdowns that are required. It's not, you can't do everything in a live environment. It's just not possible. So I think it's about having that open conversation at the outset and just understanding how can we come to an agreement on the best way to deliver it.
And I think also for clients to come to us as early as possible so that we can plan for that as well. So I know, Laura, you've just had a couple of hotels where we've done mechanical upgrades or facelift throughout the project, and we've been specifically told that it has to obviously be done in the summer months or the quieter months in the UAE, and that in itself has a challenge. But if we can come on board earlier on, then we can actually plan for that in advance in order to make it a successful project delivery, and then also for the revenue to start coming in once that work's been done.
There's elements of procurement as well,
Absolutely,
like you said. Things take time to get here in the region that we live and work in. It's not just we can go to the shop and buy all the materials that we need to do the works. There's a lead-in time for that and for any design that needs to be done, and I think that's something that's often underestimated in construction as a whole.
And I think that's when it comes to us kind of collaborating with designers as well, like local materials, other disciplines within CSQ. So we may need to lean on the building surveyors, or project managers lead on the commercial management aspect of the company, or even our development team as well, especially when it comes to layouts or return on investments. So if that means removing one lift shaft or moving a column, and then they can get more space for a tenant, or the leasable area as well. That also comes into this. There's so many different aspects that fall into it, really. Has there been any challenges with your phased approach for the hotels that you've looked at in Ras Al Khaimah?
For example, if you have guests, you obviously have to take account that might be somebody's holiday there. Noisy works is a big one, and also dusty works. Trying to phase that so that it's as minimal disruption as possible is a challenge, but that's where the close coordination with the operations teams and the wider client team is important, and the contractors that you've appointed. I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge. And also it's really just about managing kind of the level of upgrade works that are required against the budget that's available as well, which again comes down to the early consulting element of it, making sure that expectations for all these different aspects are aligned.
I think, particularly if we've given pricing before where it makes sense, but then as soon as it becomes phased, it is protracted and it's going to cost more, and the disruptive works are harder to manage. And so, as you say, at least we've got the engagement early on them. You can give the client realistic expectations, and not just that, for program delivery as well. So we've had conversations before where clients want it to be done in 8 weeks, and it's just unachievable, really. Not with the best will in the world we would, but it's better to be clear with them that it's going to be a couple of months longer or run over.
And then they can plan internally, especially like with operations and also financially when they're going to start to be able to fill those rooms.
And then cancelling on guests, which is then commercially not great for the hotels either. So
I think it's being realistic about what can be achieved, and that's part of our job.
Which is the experience we have, I guess, isn't it? We've done it enough now that we know where the pitfalls are going to be and where the problems are going to be in it.
Although I would say that it's always a steep learning curve on any of these refurbishment projects, and you sometimes don't think that you'll be able to achieve a certain element in, say, in a particular time frame, and actually when you get the right people in the room you can find quite good solutions.
One of the topics we had here was about the future of asset repositioning, but I think we're actually seeing this is not just the future, this is now. This is something that's actually being looked at now and is really important. We see the stats all the time about the occupancy of villas, for example, and the shortage of maybe villas, townhouses, where families would be moving into. So it's actually not just individuals moving here, it's their whole family moving over here. The cellular data, telephone numbers, school enrolment, it's all of these statistics are actually saying that Dubai is getting busier, UAE is getting busier. So that then means there's a need for the office space.
That whole repositioning projects do play a large role in the UAE hitting any sustainability targets. It's like working with what's already there. We've got a lot of buildings and building fabrics which we can use.
I mean, I think the other challenge is going to be, like we're saying, the older buildings, what people expect from the building now. Buildings have had gyms for years, for example, but wellness and the ESG requirements, I think, will change what someone, if you've got the choice of a building with, I don't know, a walking track nearby.
Or a walking track in the building, or a gym in the building.
Because if you've got the choice of two, you're going to pick the one with the better facilities, aren't you? Or, as you say, it's difficult because the supply is shorter at the moment, but as more comes online, again, people will vote with their feet. They'll go where the better options are. So it become a necessity for landlords to make sure that they can provide these.
Yeah, definitely, especially with a lot of the newer buildings. They are becoming kind of destinations that people will go to. A lot of the newer buildings will have offices, residential, a lot of restaurant options. It's almost like, obviously the older buildings didn't necessarily have that.
And I suppose there'll be the challenge of weaving that, having those options available within a single building or within the district that they are.
And it goes in line with a lot of the UAE regulations and wellness, even when it comes to fitness month or there's so many innovative events, and, we really are quite a growth mindset here where we live. People want to do more, people want to be fitter, want to have breakout areas, want to go and have a nice lunch, maybe a business, more than what you would do maybe coming from a different country like the UK or something. We work a lot more in the offices in our industry as well. We work together quite a lot at CSQ. We're very lucky. We're very close to JBR, which has got lots of amenities and walking distance. And I think it's about how you can implement that into some of these buildings which are older and in areas that don't necessarily have that, and making them more attractive as well.
So we've touched on a lot of the challenges in terms of the project delivery in refurbishing assets and managing a full repositioning strategy. So where does CSQ come in?
Between us, we've got a lot of experience. We're a multidisciplinary organisation, so we've got cost project management, we've got architects, as we said, within the team. We've got a lot of experience from the building surveying team. We can give really good early advice. Sophia's team, I've got a lot of, again, experience in delivering here, not just in new build, but on refurbishment and fit out works. We've got a lot of good cost data there. Through to the delivery team, you'll get a project manager assigned to you. So the project manager, more often than not, will be the main point of contact for you throughout the process, start to finish. You know who you're dealing with.
Cry together, laugh together.
Having worked at larger practices, you can end up with a number of people. I've seen clients in previous lives who might become frustrated about who to speak to or who's looking after the project.
The strategy, like you said, of allocating resource on projects, it's really as well about, making sure that you have the right team for a particular project and pulling on those skill sets. And I think at CSQ we make sure that, you have the senior professionals element as well. Often that each project is partner-led, for example.
Yeah. And we can lean on each other. So if, for example, we've been assigned on a job which is only commercial management or commercial management, project management services, and we stumble across something that's a challenge that we didn't know was going to be there, like unforeseen risk, such as something not working that commercially we don't, we thought, for example, FCUs, we were told at the beginning that we can reuse the FCUs, and it turns out halfway through a project we can't, and now suddenly they're going to cost a lot of money for that client who we've not got the contingency for. We can lean on our building surveyors, or we can lean on other elements of our company and maybe have a look at the project and the challenges together, which is, I think, where we really benefit and complement each other. So it might be, okay, fine, we need to spend that money on the upgrades to the FCUs, but let's work with one of our designers or someone that's worked on another project where they've maybe value engineered a floor type out, and they've used and to try and get that value for the client. And I think that's something is a real kind of behind the scenes that isn't really seen from the outset, but it really does actually complement and work really well. As an RICS regulated firm, the majority of our staff are chartered professionals, so we all have that foundation of knowledge on standard best practice and also what's in our remit and what's not in our remit. So that's where we can then lean on each other, from commercial to building surveyors to project management, and the advice that we can give to clients. And that really, really helps and supports the asset repositioning, because there's so many different elements throughout that life cycle where commercially I might not actually need to come into a project until a lot later on, after you've done, your TDD review, or maybe we've had an external consultant come in and looked and, for example, they may have done like an MEP upgrade report, or a third party come in. So we just lean on each other throughout that cycle.
So the market here has always been ambitious, but now it's becoming more focused on design-led, with more of a focus on the sustainability aspects. And so I think the projects that combine both that commercial element balanced with the general overall value that can be provided to the tenant, and also from a sustainability standpoint.
Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. If you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to the team.